Welcome to the Fire and Earth podcast with your hosts, Jason Mefford and Kathy Gruber. Fire and Earth, giving you the keys to unlock your limitless potential.
Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Fire and Earth podcast. I'm your co-host, Kathy Gruber.
And I'm Jason Mefford. And today we're going to go a little different. I know, I've got so much energy.
I was going to say, no more coffee for you.
I'm trying to amp myself up. I've only had one cup of coffee so far, but I'm trying to get going. Woo! We record these a little earlier in the day than typically I like to start my work. So just so we can do the same way, Kathy, right? We like to start work an hour or two later than we are normally recording these. But anyway, as we were chatting before we got started, both of us have kind of been experiencing some similar things from clients, but I think it's an important thing to talk about in relationships in general, right? So some of these issues that we have had with clients is also a good lesson for us in the relationships that we have with other people. And so, kind of what's been happening, we're going to give you a little bit more detail. We'll protect the guilty by not sharing their names. But what happens a lot of times is people make assumptions and then make certain conclusions or decisions without really involving the other person or without really kind of clarifying or explaining so that you can come to some mutually acceptable decision.
Exactly.
Okay, so Kathy, start your rant and let's kind of bring this in, because I think it's important. I think all of us do this more often than we realize.
Yeah.
And it damages the relationships that we have with other people.
And it drives me crazy.
And it drives you crazy. So it's a little bit of a rant session, a little bit of a, hey, quit doing this, and here's what you can do instead.
Well, no rant. It's a frustration because it's not open communication. And you know me, I want to have a conversation about things. So I get a call from a woman who has taken over the conference for an organization. And she said, hey, this is my first year. You came highly recommended. We'd love you to be our opening keynote. I said, great. So we go over details. I said, I'd say what I always say, which is, my job is to make your job easier and my job is to make you look good. She loves that. So we go blah, 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 blah. And we get to the end and she goes, oh, here's the awkward part of the conversation. And I said, what do I charge? And she laughed. She goes, yeah. And I said, well, I'm going to throw it back to you. What do you pay? Because I don't know what their budget is. And, we were talking before. I'm like, if it's a massage, I got a rate. If it's coaching, I got a rate. Because for someone who's seeking that out, they pretty much know what they're going to pay. You're not going to get a surprise. It's not going to be a $5,000 massage, right? So with the speaking,
I can't imagine what that would be like.
I have an idea, and it's not legal. So I don't know if your budget for your speaker's 10 grand or if your budget for your entire conference is 10 grand. I don't know. I need guidance on that. And I said, well, she goes, and she hemmed and hawed. And I said, well, let me ask you this. I said, what did you pay the opening speaker last year? And she said, I'm not sure. I think it was $6,000. And I said, that would be wonderful. That's in my range. That's fabulous. I said, I just booked something similar for $5,500. I said, if that, that's great. She goes, okay, well, let me run this by everybody and I'll get back to you. It's okay, fine. And I kind of forget about it. It was our anniversary. I probably would have seen her in my things to follow up with, pile. And I get an email last night, end of day for her. So there's nothing I can do about it. Right? She's 2 hours ahead. End of day for her. Hey, Kathy, sorry for the delay. Some things happened before I could get in with the executive team. Turns out the budget's only $3,000. So I guess we can't work with you. Thanks. So rather than coming back to me and saying, hey, I made a mistake, it's actually $3,000. Is that something you could work with? She just assumed I didn't want that.
Yep.
It's a lot of money. I don't know, to be very honest, I don't normally get $6,000 for talks. 3 is kind of actually more of what I've been getting, especially with post-COVID. I don't know about you, but I've noticed all rates are dropping for speakers. I'm getting so much less than I was 3 years ago. And believe me, I'm not buying at $3,000. That's a good chunk of money. But instead of giving me an opportunity to like have a conversation around that, she just assumed I wouldn't want it. Now, what I'm hoping is they didn't just go book somebody else and I've completely lost it, which would really frustrate me. And I've had other situations where that's the case, where like I'll quote them a range and they'll come back and go, oh, we can't do that. Sorry. And they just don't even come back with a number. And I've had so many, speaker coaches and things, say you always give them a number. They will negotiate. They won't. And I've had to, I didn't want to offend you by giving you a lower number. I didn't want to, and it's like, offend me. Like that's such a ridiculous thing to say. I 100% of the time come back with something else. I honestly have had people do that with massages. They're like, you came highly recommended. I'm really in pain. That's out of my budget. Is there any way you could, do you have a price break for that? I've had people ask me that question. I respect that. Sometimes I can do it, sometimes I can't. But to quote Phil Gerbachek, who was on our show,
Yeah.
if the talk is up the street and you're offering me a chicken dinner and my wife hasn't cooked yet, I'm coming to do your talk.
Yeah. Well, no, because that's the way. I mean, I actually had a group reach out to me because I'm living in Sedona right now, and it's a group in Phoenix, and they're like, hey, we'd love to have you come. Unfortunately, we don't have budget, right? They were honest up front about it. And I'm like, well, what day is it? And they told me, and it was a day that I have open. I'm like, if you can book me in the middle of the day so I can drive down and drive back in the same day, I'll be happy to do it for you.
Yep.
Right. Even though it's free, because, hey, you reached out, you were honest to me.
Yep.
I had the day available. I would be happy to help you. Right.
Yep.
And as you're talking, because I'll share some of my experience stuff too, but it just reminds me of, in personal relationships too, for the people that I love and that are my friends, I do almost anything for them. But how much of the time do people make assumptions like, oh, Jason, I didn't want to bother you. I didn't want to offend you. I thought you wouldn't do it. Right. So you're making,
you wouldn't want to.
you wouldn't want to do it. And so people are making all of these assumptions beforehand without ever even asking the question, without ever even having some kind of communication. Or if you have a little bit of what you think might be a little bit of a hiccup, instead of having the conversation, we just don't have it at all.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that really damages our relationships because, again, I want to help. I want to do what I can. And what's so sad to me is when people that I love, right, don't ask for my help. Because, again, it's like, well, I didn't think you would want to do that. Are you kidding me? I would love to do that for you. If I can help and serve you in that way, I would love to do it, right? Give me the opportunity, because when we make those assumptions, we don't even give the other person the opportunity to respond.
Yep.
Right. And I think we talked about before, like the guy who went around and wanted to be rejected. Right.
Yeah.
He was trying to be rejected. And there's a great YouTube video about that.
Yeah, he did 100 times he was going to hear no to get himself over the idea of being rejected. And then he found that the more he did it, people started saying yes to things that were just insane.
Well, and because if you don't ask, the answer is always no.
Right.
If you ask, at least you have a 50-50 chance.
Right. And I have to say, I'm just really, because I'm thinking back to something else that happened. It's so disrespectful because it doesn't give the other person any sort of freedom or agency in their own decisions. I had done this huge outreach to chambers of commerce. Now, chambers of commerce often don't have a speaker budget. You come to their breakfast meeting. I just did one last week. I showed up at 7 a.m. in Pasadena to do their breakfast meeting for a bunch of HR people. I sold a handful of books. I made some great connections. I tried on wedding dresses in Burbank. It was a great day. And then I went down to Orange County and I did a free talk for a cancer center. It's like, I don't mind doing, gratis work if it's something that I believe in and I can help. I had such an incredible day. It was exhausting, but I had an incredible day. But I remember one of the chambers, it was like down past Orange County. And she said, well, we don't pay, so you won't want to do this. And I said, well, how many people would I be able to sell my books? Yeah, but you don't want to drive that far. And she basically talked herself out of talking. It was such an irritating exchange because she kept telling me that I didn't want to do it. And I'm like, but you didn't even give me the option to tell you if I wanted to do it. It's like that. To me, it was incredibly disrespectful. And I'm thinking, I kind of now don't want to do it because you're sort of being a jerk about it.
Well, and it's sad because, again, I understand a lot of times we don't want to ask for help or we don't want to have maybe what we think is going to be an uncomfortable discussion.
Right.
But if you don't have the discussion, like you said, first off, you're taking away the agency, right?
Yeah.
Let me
Especially if
say,
I offered.
yeah, let me say yes or no on whether or not I can do it for you. Don't make that assumption for me, right?
Yep.
And not even allow me the opportunity to say yes or no.
Yeah.
It might be no, I don't know, but let's at least have the conversation about it, right? Because in the other thing is when we don't have those conversations, we don't allow the other people an opportunity to serve, right? Which again is a huge no-no in my book as well, right? Because
Mhm.
it's like, we're taking away an opportunity for somebody else to serve or
Yeah.
to do something that they want to do. And again, whether that's for pay or not for pay, right? I mean, you've got to kind of let the other person decide and just put the offer out there,
Yeah.
right?
I have a massage client. I see both he and his wife. I haven't seen him in forever. I see his wife really regularly. Dear friends, I've known them forever. And I had done a massage on the husband. This was a couple years ago. And I had to get my car back from the car place. It was getting an oil changed. And I knew it was on the way to his house, Santa Barbara, small place where you don't have to go very far. And so when he was done with the massage, I said, hey, can I ask you a favor? And he goes, no, and he laughed. He goes, of course, what's going on? And I said, my car's at the shop. I said, I know it's on the way back to your house. Is there any way you could drop me off? If you're going a different direction or if you're in a rush, that's no problem. And he goes, wow, thank you. And I said, what? And he goes, thank you for letting me be of service to you. It would be my pleasure to take you to get your car.
Mm-hmm.
And at first I was like, am I being punked? Is there a camera somewhere? I mean, he was so
You're on candid camera.
But he was like so happy to get to help me. And like it almost made me tear up because I'm like, wow, okay, and I didn't want to, you don't want to bug somebody, you don't want to bother them, you don't want to, you don't want to be a burden, whatever it is. And it's like I'm recognizing more and more that it's okay to make a request for somebody. And I remember that I had put in to do a talk back in Pennsylvania, and it was at the time my dad was still alive. And I would have been able to see my dad. And it turns out they didn't have a budget. We have this whole conversation. They're ready to book me. And then she goes, oh, I'm sorry. I thought you were local. You don't want to come this far. So we booked someone else. It's like,
there you go. Right.
So time and time again, and I don't know if it's just the speaking industry where they're so used to, speakers that if you don't give them 10 grand, they won't come. If you're out there and you book speakers or you book service people, it's okay to ask. You're not going to offend them by, oh, well, actually, I see a bunch of magicians talking about that. How dare you offer $100 for a gig? That's offensive. Okay, so maybe people do get offended. I don't get offended. I'd rather have the offer and then get to make the decision myself. So there it is.
Well, and I think the other thing too, because I see this a lot of times I end up doing kind of proposal work for bigger organizations, which, again, sometimes takes months. It's back and forth and back and forth. And a lot of times you don't really get feedback. Again, the decision gets made in a vacuum by them, and then you don't get any feedback, and you don't have an opportunity, right, to try to make things right.
Yeah.
And so I'll give you an example. I was doing a proposal for a very large insurance company here in the US to train about 250 of their employees, right? And so we went back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. I mean, on these kinds of deals, I end up on a lot of different calls talking about what we can do, the functionality of it. Hey, we've done this. 15,000 people have gone through this company. We've been in business for 7 years. We know what we're doing, right?
Yep.
So I have to kind of go through that whole process, and there's endless, especially with large companies. There are different groups within the company that you have to talk about, that you have to convince, and then there's different levels of executives and everything else, right? So it ends up, I know when I'm getting into one of these deals that I'm going to have a lot of business development time up front, right? And if the deal doesn't go through, I lost money, right? Because I spent hours and hours and hours going through this. So I have to kind of build that into my rates. right? Knowing that, or, the other thing too, with things like this, where it's long term, maybe this was going to be kind of over a year and a half time frame, that I have to get paid up front, because at any time the company could pull the plug, right? So I have to know that I'm going to get paid. So the rates at the beginning are a little bit more than they are at the end. Right. And so we went back and forth and back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. And it was one of these where they told us what they wanted. And so we were giving them what they said they wanted. Right. And so they're like, well, let's have 3 people go through this. Okay, great. We'll give you a great discount on this. We'll have those 3 people go through this. And at the end of the day, they came back and they're like, well, it's not really what we wanted, right? Because, and again, these 3 people were more experienced. And so what we were giving them that was going to go to all 250 people, they thought was rather elementary. And it's like, okay, first off, right? I mean, you can't judge the whole thing based on that. But regardless, right? So we did get a little bit of money for that. And they're like, no, this is really the direction that we want to go. So they laid out like these 5 phases. So we spent a bunch of time coming up with how that would work, doing the proposal, and sending it out to them. Right. And again, I know a lot of times with corporate clients, they want a discount. And so they always come back and ask for a discount. So I have to estimate a little bit higher, knowing that I have some cushion to come back and give them what they feel is a great deal. Right. And so we go through that whole thing. I send off the proposal and I hear nothing. Abso-fucking-lutely nothing. And so a week goes by and I send an email and say, hey, haven't heard anything. Just wanted to make sure you got the proposal. Oh yeah, we're just looking at it and considering our options. I'm like, oh, motherfucker. Well, first off, you didn't tell me you were talking to other people. And really, there's nobody else in the world who can deliver the training that they were looking for. But anyway, so besides us, right? And so fine, right? Let me know how the process, goes. If you have questions, let me know. Nothing. Another week goes by. So I sent another follow-up message and I'm like, just checking in to see what your process is going on. If your primary driver for your decision is the financial investment, please let me know because we can work on that. Nothing. Right. Again, for another week or two. And so finally had to follow up again. Well, yeah, we chose to go another route. Thank you very much. Blah, 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 blah. Very, very, very banal and generic.
Right.
And so again, my response is, well, could you let me know why? Right. Because I want some feedback.
Give me an opportunity to
make it right, or to understand maybe what we did that you didn't like.
Oh
right?
My God.
And most of the time they just don't even respond, or they just, again, give some bullshit response. At least in this instance, they kind of came back and said, well, our corporate learning and development group wanted to be able to host it on our platform, and we needed to have, the IP rights to it. Which again, I probably wouldn't have done, because I'm not going to give somebody my IP and the IP of this other person that I'm working with without some significant royalties. And then it's a pain in the ass to keep track of. But regardless, they didn't even give me the opportunity to have that discussion about it, because maybe we could have worked something out. Right. And so, to me, and again, we both talked about kind of business related things, but how much of the time do we make assumptions and do we make decisions without ever even checking back in with the other person, without ever allowing them the opportunity, right, to do it? And I think it just damages our relationships with other people. And like I said, I see this in my personal life. There's a particular friend who I know, who I love, right, that wants to be independent, wants to be able to do everything on on their own. Totally understand that. But I also understand we can't do everything on our own. And I know there are ways that I can help this person, and I want to, right? But if they're going to continue to make assumptions about, oh, Jason wouldn't want to do that.
Yeah.
Oh, I have to do it myself. Oh, whatever. And just make unilateral decisions without allowing me the opportunity, our relationship can't grow like
Or
it
exist.
could, it could, right?
Yeah.
Or exist, because it's the same thing. It's like, Kathy, I want to help you. I love you. You're my friend. But if I never have an opportunity to serve or help you, right, then our relationship can't ever go to that next phase. Right.
And I think the other thing that drives me crazy is the ghosting aspect of it, right? And we hear that in dating. It's like, I had a great time with this guy. He said he'd call me and he never did. First of all, that creates an open loop, which our brain cannot stand. And I've had that happen too. I was supposed to head down to LA to do a gig for this nursing thing, and I was really excited about it. It was right around the corner from the castle. It was, going to be a nice dinner. I love helping nurses and medical professionals. It wasn't the highest paid thing in the world, but it was okay for a day's work, near the castle. About a week before, she said, we lost our venue. They're having some big event that now has spilled over into our space. Let me know what of these 3 dates, what would work for you. I'm like, okay, great. So I said, I'm like, hey, all 3 of those work. Let me know. Nothing. About a week goes by and I go, oh, hey, I never heard from them. And now these dates are coming up, right? And I wrote back and said, hey, just wanted to check in. I'm available for any 3 of those dates. Didn't have the courtesy to get back to me. Now, those 3 dates have passed. I don't know if the meeting happened and they didn't use me. I don't know if the whole thing fell apart and got canceled because it was sort of this like innovative thing they were trying to do. But it's like, fucking tell me. Just text me back and go, I'm sorry, the thing's off. Like, that absolutely drives me crazy. And I think as we're having this conversation, I think that's going to be my new thing that I say to people when I'm on the phone with them. Before we get off the call, I'm going to say, hey, it's been great talking to you. I do ask one thing of you. If this works or doesn't work, if the price is good or not, I really need to hear back from you. Please do not just ghost me. I'm going to blatantly say that to people I'm on the phone with, because that's unprofessional and it's rude and it's fucks with our heads. I still have no idea if this nursing thing happened. Like, if they could call me tomorrow and ask me to do it again. But it's like, now weeks have gone by with 0 communication. And all I need to hear is, oh, hey, the thing got canceled. Or, oh, I'm so sorry, we ended up going with someone in-house, which I hear all the time. It's like, oh, they decided they wanted to do someone in the field. They wanted someone who could do CEUs. They blah, 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 blah. But it's like, I'm going to start actually making that as an ask of, hey, whichever way this goes, I do ask that you communicate with me what the status is. That's my new ask.
And I think it's just common courtesy. I think that, because again, I for the most part, my modus operandum is, when people send me a text, when people comment, when people send me a social media message, I respond back somehow. Right. And again, it's like, you talk about the dating one, where you go out, you think everything's great. Yeah, I'll call you or text you. And then neither person reaches out. Right. And again, it's a lot of times you hear it from the women, like, oh, the guy, and we slept with each other and now he's not calling me. And oh my gosh. Well, it happens for guys too. Right. It's on the other side for guys as well. Right.
Of course.
Nice guys, usually don't get the call back. It's like, oh, you're safe. I don't have to chase you. I'm not gonna. But anyway, right? So, but it's both people's responsibility, right? So it's like the poor women that are over there saying, oh my gosh, you never texted me. Well, why didn't you fucking text him?
Well,
right?
Yes, and
I have had people, it's part of it. Part of it is both ways.
But I've had people do that and still get ghosted. It's not that the woman won't reach out at all. It's that they then do, just like I reached out to this nursing thing 3 times and said, hey, what is the date? Do you still need me? Is this still happening? Just nothing. And I have to say, when I had my year of in between before I met Eric, and I was doing the online dating, which I did for about 3 months, which I thought was a blast. I just went into it with, I'm going to meet fun people and this is going to be interesting. And, as my friends, this is going to suck and I don't want to do it. Well, then it's going to suck. Every single guy I went out with, only 2 made it to a second date. No one made it past that. But every single one, the second I realized this was not going to work, I sent a text that said, "Hey, thank you so much for dinner, lunch, coffee. I don't feel a connection. You're a great guy. I don't feel a connection. I really wish you luck in finding the right person for you." Every single one. And I have to say that was probably because I am not great at that. My thing is more, oh, I'll just I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings. I don't want to be the bad guy, is what my dad always used to say. It takes balls to reject someone. It really, really does. People who don't like to be rejected, it also sucks to reject somebody. You feel like crap, especially if you're like nice and empathetic and but I made a deal with myself that I would not do that to anybody. And every single person got that text from me of saying, "Hey, you're a great guy. Thank you so much for the fill in the blank. I don't feel a connection there. I really wish you luck." I swore I was going to do, and I think that was the biggest thing I learned from online dating was how to reject somebody in a way that was kind and concise and didn't leave the door open. Because I see a lot of people doing that. "Oh, it's not good for me right now." What is a salesperson here? "Oh, great, I'll call you next month." It's like no is a full sentence. And that is what I got out of the online dating, was being able to kindly reject an offer that I wasn't real good at before.
Well, and I think it's important because, a lot of times we might think, oh, I don't want to ruffle the feathers. I don't want to reject somebody. I don't want to be the mean person necessarily, but you can do it in a kind way. And it's actually more unkind, more mean to not
Yeah.
say something, right? Because then the other person, it fucks with their head, right? I mean, again, our business examples, it's like I went for 4, 5, 6 weeks wondering, is this deal going to come through, right? Because I'd kind of got it in my projected revenues of in cash flows, and now to not have it come in, it kind of fucks with me for a few weeks, right? It would have been better for them to come back right away and say thanks but no thanks, or not even, right? Because the bullshit excuse that they gave me, they should have told me that 3, 4 months ago,
Sure, if they knew that's what
because
they were
I
looking
started talking with their corporate L&D group,
for.
right? That's who reached out to me to begin with. It's like, if you'd already made that decision beforehand, why the fuck are you dragging me along for 6 months? And I lost money on the deal.
Sure.
I lost money, right? Because I got a little bit of cash flow, but I invested probably 4 to 5 times more in the business development than what I actually got. So yeah, just respond back to people. If you don't want to date somebody again, then just tell them, right? Don't leave them hanging, because that's the more kind thing to actually do.
Yeah. I have a girlfriend who, really close friend of mine, she was dating a guy for a while and he broke up with her, which we all kind of went, whoa, because that doesn't happen. Normally she is the breaker, not the breaky. And she said, "Okay, I am really surprised by that. And, can we go talk about it?" And he said, "I need to process. Give me a week." And she's like, "Okay, you did the breaking up. What do you, like, why can't we talk about this?" And they finally, after about a week or week and a half, sat down in a coffee shop and kind of like debriefed as to why it wasn't working. And at the end of the conversation, he said to her, "Wow, this is the first time I've had a breakup and haven't gotten screamed at." So, you know what? Good for him for having the balls, after that being his experience consistently, to actually sit down with her and be an adult and have a breakup, because his previous experience was, oh, she's going to yell at me, she's going to demean me, she's going to be mad, and my friend's not like that. But when she told me that, I was like, my heart kind of broke a little bit. It's like, oh, the poor guy, because he was such a sweet man. But that was his experience, was someone's going to be mad at me, and we go out of our way to not get yelled at, not be shamed, not be demeaned. So in that way, I get it, but we have to grow up, people. Come on.
Well, and I think too, I mean, we know how that story ended, right? But having that conversation, it could have gone a totally different way too, right? Like the guy might have been making some assumptions, or your friend might have been acting in a certain way that isn't necessarily what she wanted to do. But having that conversation, at the end of the conversation, it could have been like, God, I was wrong about this. I really do like you. We need to keep this going, right?
Exactly.
But if you don't have the conversation, you never know. And you kind of owe it to yourself and you owe it to the other person to actually have that conversation. Have the balls, even if it's going to be an uncomfortable discussion, or you think it's going to be an uncomfortable discussion, still have the balls to do it.
Yeah.
And women, you can have balls too. Okay. So come on, bring it. Bring it.
All right. Well, we've talked around this. Okay. So just be honest, be open. And I think the other thing too is just goes back to know what you want. Because if truly the company that kind of strung you around didn't know what they wanted, they were sort of dicking around with you. And then 3 months in, they went, oh, this is what we want. Oh, and Jason can't do that. Know what you want before you start the ask.
Yeah.
I think that's really important too. And I use this example all the time. You don't get into an Uber and say, take me someplace. You have to know where you're going to go. Then you can't get mad at the Uber guy if he doesn't take you there, if you don't tell him what you want in the first place. So know what you want, communicate clearly, don't ghost anybody. It's just shitty. I will check my email and see if the woman got back to me about, we'll leave it hanging. No, I haven't heard back. Okay.
No, okay.
Because this was just yesterday where I was like, no, I could do it for that price. We'll do a follow-up episode to let you know if I actually got the gig or not.
There we go.
So we don't have
There we go.
All right. Well, that's it. Just communicate clearly and know what you want. That's it. I'm Kathy Gruber. That's if you'd like to book me as a speaker, and I am flexible in my rate, I can be reached at kathygruber.com.
And I'm Jason Mefford. I can be reached at jasonmefford.com. So yeah, go out. Just start communicating differently and quit making all the assumptions and making decisions before you actually have the conversations with other people. And we'll see you on the next episode of the Fire and Earth podcast. See ya.
See ya.